All right, back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. Our guest, Clint Kelly, malpractice attorney. We got some phone calls, Clint, before we get to some of these other cases. We'll go next to Michael. Michael, good morning. Hi, Mike.
Good morning to you. Good morning, attorney. And thanks for trying to keep the good fight in a state and a region of the country that basically takes advantage of people who are not proactive. And I mean by that, people who, for some reason, believe that doctors are the closest thing to Jesus Christ himself, which is not always the case. And basically, a lot of people don't realize how our dire situations are until they have a relative or themselves are involved in an injury or a claim, and realize that the only thing they're going to get, even if, let's say, a doctor cut off the wrong leg that was supposed to be amputated, the most they're going to get out of money in Tennessee is probably going to be around $750,000. But then you got to look at where we come from. We're a state and a region who rarely goes out and votes and stands up for our own rights. So you can't really expect much. What do you see for the future of Tennessee and other mostly red states that are where the tort reform and everything are able to basically manipulate the legislators to make it where patients' rights are held to a minimum, and where liability on the doctor's part is granted a lot of leeway. And basically it's like this, Nick, and I'll sum it up this way. If I know I can ride through a school zone and only get a $15 ticket versus a $500 ticket, I'm probably going to be a little bit more lax when driving through that school zone. But if I know I'm going to be ticketed higher with a $500 school zone ticket, a ticket driving through a school zone, I'm going to probably be a little bit more extra careful than I probably would have been. And I'll let that equation relate to the medical care field. And you guys have a good morning.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mike.
Michael brought up a lot of, he's spot on so many points. Let me answer your question, Michael, the big picture question. I think change is in the air. I think that the pendulum has swung so far to the side of protecting doctors and hospitals and pharmaceutical companies against the rights of patients and consumers. I think the pendulum is beginning to swing back. And let me explain why very quickly. First of all, you mentioned the caps, and you're exactly right. In Tennessee, there's a cap on non-economic damages of $750,000. Michael's right about that. Our Supreme Court now has taken a case, and we'll hear arguments in a month, on whether those caps are an unconstitutional infringement on our right to a jury trial. Every citizen in the state of Tennessee has a constitutional right to have a jury decide his or her damages. Not the government, a jury. And so the question before the Supreme Court is, was that cap an illegal invasion of a jury's right to decide damages? That's the issue. Okay. There's also a secondary issue of whether it's a separation of powers violation between the legislature and the courts. But anyway, that case will be decided sometime in the spring. My prediction, based on what's happened in other states, is those caps will likely be struck as unconstitutional. So that's going to make a big change, which gets to Michael's second point. The effect of a so-called ticket. When insurance companies can cap damages, they can cap their risk. And so whatever mistake or negligence causes a major injury, they can look at that injury and they can cap the value as to what it's worth. And it's much easier to process claims when you know what the value is versus a case where you're not sure what the value is because it could be extraordinary.
Right.
So just like he said, bringing it to a medical malpractice case, think of a person who's injured and dies, and their maximum value is worth $750,000. A 75-year-old man or an 80-year-old lady. Take that same case with no caps, and let's say the pain and suffering, disfigurement, the 75-year-old man's in a wheelchair. That case now is worth $5 million. Think of the impact that's going to have on the healthcare providers going forward when they know that a negligent decision makes a $5 million difference versus a $750,000 difference.
Right.
I know it seems cold, I know it seems dispassionate, but money talks.
Oh yeah, we've seen it time and again. So
And
you've
money
said
makes
this.
things happen.
The difference is then when they get hit in the chops with something massive, it's incentive to make sure that never happens again. If for no other reason, you're compensating the victim. But I think what we're all interested in, and you are too, in these cases when you win, you're hoping that, okay, you've won for your client, you're hoping that the defendant ends up changing it so it never happens again. And man, $5 million is going to get their attention, right?
My hope going forward is that people who watch this show, people like Michael, will begin to start calling their legislators, emailing folks, or just raising Cain whenever they see a case like what we're talking about here in the media, and some bozo comes out there and tries to defend the malpractice caps, okay, or tries to argue that doctors and hospitals are being run out of town because of malpractice lawsuits. The cure to malpractice, Nick, is less malpractice.
Right, exactly. Quality
It's
care.
not caps, it's not anything else, it's quality care. And people need to get on the phone or email their legislators or raise Cain in the media, because that's what keeps these laws from getting any worse against the patient.
All right, let's go next to Joe. Joe, good morning. Hi, Joe.
Joe.
Good morning, Nick. Just a comment. Mr. Kelly's done hit on the bottom line of this whole debacle is money. If you go up there to the legislators, you'll have trouble getting by the lobbyists for the drug companies. But most of these pain clinics are run by anesthesiologists. I know one particular one, he's got 5 offices that sees patients, and you go over and see it. You'll watch people from Kentucky, out of county, coming in there to get their 30-day supply, and he's got a drug store in the clinics where he can fill it for you. But the other thing I'll say real quick is we had I think it was a state senator, I'm not sure, Steve Dickerson. They finally come down on him. He was running
Steve Dickerson.
another one of the largest group of pain clinics in the state of Tennessee. And he's up there in a position to stop some of this stuff. So the drug companies are putting out a lot of big money to these doctors. So that's the bottom line to it.
Okay, yeah.
Well, and to make sure that the record's clear, Steve Dickerson was not charged with a crime. I believe he and his company were sued by the government and involved some Medicare billing issues, but there's never any allegation that Senator Dickinson got somebody addicted or did anything wrong.
Okay.
But he does have a fight ahead of him with regard to the U.S. government. But the change in the air that I sense is that people finally are looking around and saying, enough is enough with giving big corporations their rights. What about my rights? What do I get as a consumer? And I've been wondering, when are people finally going to wake up and say, we're paying so much for health care, why can't we do better than this?
All right, let's go to Mary next. Mary, good morning. Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Hey, how can we help you?
I have called you all back in about February about my daughter. Anyway, since then, the hospital released her within a week, 2 weeks after my calling Mr. Kelly on your show, and they sent her home. She was a bad diabetic. That was part of why she came to the hospital to begin with, was her sugar was way, way too high. Anyway, these people sent her home with no diabetic medicine, no weight. She had neuropathy in her arm, in her hands, in her feet. Anyway, she went through several surgeries while she was in this institution. My question is, my granddaughter and I want to know what the criteria is. It's like my granddaughter said, the money would be good, but the money is not what we're after. We're after some kind of resolution for my daughter, her mother. They kept her in the, what do you call it, where they do the autopsies. The doctor, her personal physician, took her over 1 week to go to the medical building to determine her death. Then she gave reasons on her death certificate, some of the things the woman didn't even have. I was her mother for 52 years,
Mary,
Mary,
what's the criteria that you're asking about?
The criteria is, do we have a case? It has now been 6 months since she passed away.
Okay. All right, hang on.
Mary, I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know. But that's why I want you to call. Call my office. It's 615-8000000. That's 615-800-0000. When you call, you ask to speak to Michelle. Michelle is the one who handles all of my calls, and she screens them, and she will do an interview. If she's not there, Mary, someone else in the office will conduct an interview. You give them all the information that you can about what happened to her, what you know. She's going to send a report to me, and then I will investigate the claim and see if I think it has merit. What's important that I need to know, Mary, I need to know where she was, how long she was there, what's on the death certificate, and what you claim was done wrong. Okay?
Well, my granddaughter has pictures on her smartphone. She has papers where that they did this or they did that, and she was just butchered is all that her and I can say. They sent her to rehab, and one of the rehabs did absolutely nothing as far as medical care. My daughter, had to call an ambulance.
Well, you call my office and speak to Michelle, or someone else will take your call and conduct an interview, and then I'll take a look at it, Mary, and I'll get back to you and let you know if I think you got a case.
Clint will let you know one way or the other. And Mary, I am sorry for your loss, but it's good you called in. I think, listening to her, it was within the last 6 months.
Correct.
So it's within the statute of limitations. So, hey, look, what Mary's doing is at least checking. Clint will go over it with her and then let her know one way or the other whether she has a case.
And the call's free and confidential.
Yeah, exactly. Let's take a break. And Mary, do give him a call. If you missed the number, we'll put it up again at the end of the program, but it's an easy one to remember. All right. We come back. Tom and others on hold. Stay there. We'll get to you right after this.